now move to Michael Keren, who holds the Canada Research Chair in Communication, Culture and Civil Society at the University of Calgary.
Now, I'm going to devote my 8 minutes to one of the media we are discussing here tonight, which are blogs, web blogs. And if you'll allow me, I'll just tell you what I understand web blogs to be. Basically, web blogs or blogs are personal diaries. For example, if you are going to go home after this event, hopefully not too early, and you are going to put on your pyjama, and then you are going to find some notebook that's hidden under your pillow, and you are going to write your thoughts about the day and your feelings. I've been this evening in the Glenbow Museum, and there was a symposium, and it was quite nice, and the speakers were excellent. Besides the guy who had a pretty nice suit but sounded a little weird. And that would be a personal diary. Now, if you are going to post that online for the world to see, that's going to be a blog. Now, the world may see it or it may not see it. You know, you may post your thoughts and feelings day after day. No one is going to read it. On the other hand, there are many blogs that are being read, you know, and this is actually quite a revolution, if you wish. You know, since 1999, when a company named Pira actually made blogging quite accessible to everyone. Many people began to write their thoughts, their feelings, post their cat's picture on their blogs, posted certain articles of interest, and so on and so forth. Now, let me say right away that I think that this is an enormous mark of liberation and emancipation, in the sense that if you think about it this way, a few years ago, only persons of repute, someone who is a major scientist or a political leader, or someone who achieved prominence in some field, or a movie star could write his or her autobiography. Today, everyone can actually write an autobiography without the constraints of publishers and editors and social constraints and so on and so forth. And this is, of course, liberation of the individual in many ways. And blogs also became an alternative media. If you think, for example, about these soldiers, American soldiers in Iraq, who were blogging during the war and are still blogging from the battlefield to our computers at home, that's quite a media revolution. We only have to imagine a soldier in the Peloponnesian Wars or in the Napoleonic Wars blogging home, say, about the conditions in Russia or something of that sort. We wouldn't have needed Tolstoy then to tell us about that whole situation. So that's an alternative media. And then it also became, as blogging became more popular, blogs have become a useful tool for journalists who are overcoming the resentment against the established media and are publishing their own personal blogs, or politicians who are writing blogs. During the recent Alberta elections for premier, if you remember, almost every politician opened a blog, and in one case his wife did. So that's what blogging basically is. And the question we actually posed for tonight's symposium is, does it matter? And I would like to focus on one element of that. Does it matter politically? And I would like to just give you a very recent example, as we speak actually, an example that is very, very contemporary, and this is the role of blogging in the current upheaval in Burma. And I think that this is an extremely important story to keep in mind. The London Times just published an article where it said that, that since mid-August there are those demonstrations in Burma. The military government is crushing them quite ruthlessly. And the London Times published an article where it said that the revolution actually is being conducted by 3 layers. The democratic activists who went to the streets, the Buddhist monks who then followed them and are a major part of that, and the bloggers. Now, why the bloggers? Because the mainstream media is has been largely crushed in Burma because the foreign press has very little access, as I think you know, to the situation. There was this Japanese photographer who was actually murdered by the regime during one of those revolutions, and bloggers with their digital cameras and their cell phones managed to bring out, until a few days ago when the government actually shut down the internet servers in Burma, were able to bring out information about the occurrences and some of the pictures about what's going on. And if you'll allow me to quote from the London Times, they said as follows: "If there is ever a monument to the heroes of the Saffron Revolution, it should certainly feature a statue of a skinny boy in a t-shirt and thick glasses, hunched over a computer and a digital camera." Now, I would like to concur with this statement. As long as we do not forget to include in that monument a statue of freedom fighters such as Aung San Suu Kyi and obviously those monks marching in the streets with those begging bowls in their hands, largely because I think that the above statement has a certain bias in it, a certain, I would almost say, a certain bias which is a little bit typical even to our own symposium here. I think that we are cherishing this new world of new media, this new world of information, to the extent that we sometimes forget the political reality. For example, the fact that about 90% of the Burmese people are Buddhists, while less than 1% of Burmese people have access to the internet in the first place. Now, let me just say that these events in Burma are actually showing us how important information is. Again, try to imagine yourself being a monk like that on the street, facing a ruthless regime with soldiers willing to torture you and kill you, and doing that. I mean, the one thing you would like to really have is information that goes out to the external world. It's so important. And if there is anyone who understands it in today's Burma, it's the regime. The regime that's actually closing down and harassing and intimidating bloggers and so on and so forth. However, I would also like to mention, and I think that may be some contribution to our discussion here, that the change of a regime, or for that matter, any political act, does not depend only on information. And again, we should not just forget that while we indulge in that new media that are surrounding us all. After all, it depends more on, I would say, on whether diplomats today, as we speak, in the United Nations, are going to convince the Chinese not to veto a resolution concerning sanctions in Burma. And, there are so many examples that one can bring about situations where we had all the information and yet we didn't have the willpower to act. In 1987, I met personally Rudolf Werber. Rudolf Werber was one of the two people who escaped Auschwitz, was able to create contact with the Slovakian underground and was giving them very detailed information about everything that was going on in Auschwitz. The information was passed on to the Allies. Nothing was done with that information. The gas chambers were not bombarded. In 1994, we have the example of General Dallaire, as you all know, the famous fax he sends in January to his United Nations superiors about the coming genocide in Rwanda, where 800,000 people were killed by machetes over a 3-month period, and nothing has been done with that information. Which means that we have to be a little careful in indulging over the new world of open information, because the willpower and I'll put it this way in the 1 minute left here, because in the end, it's politics as usual. You know, the good old politics that's making a difference in the world. And let me just summarize by a statement I just found in the New York Times this morning by Tom Friedman, who says as follows: Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy didn't change the world by asking people to join their Facebook crusades or to download their platforms. Activism can only be uploaded the old-fashioned way, face-to-face, in big numbers, as we are here today. Virtual politics is just that, virtual.